Welcome back to Velshi and Rule. We have been talking a lot in the last couple of days. Very unusual for us to have major stories that aren't necessarily politics, but the 737 story and this college admission story, it is wild. I think you and I both agree there are structural problems with the way people gain admission to college in America that favor some groups over others.
This goes back to the story that was broken yesterday around a scandal, really, around a group of ultra-wealthy parents working with what was known as a private college advisor to get their kids into school, except, of course, as we learned, they were potentially,
and
allegedly...
there are lots of these college advisors, and they are legitimate. They counsel kids on what's good on the application, what's not. There are a lot of people who don't have access to that because they charge on an hourly basis, and it's expensive. But most of them are not breaking the law. They are advising students on best practices.
And this was a massive sting operation, the largest we've seen in terms of college application fraud, or the Department of Justice has.
Paying people off, bribing proctors, bribing college coaches.
Fake photos of kids pretending that their children were athletes, getting them on those teams and schools as athletes, but of course, never participating in a sport. Joining us now, someone who knows an awful lot about this subject, Matthew Stewart. He's the author of Nature's God, The Heretical Origins of the American Republic. All right, Matthew, you talk about something, the tales of three classes in relation to the college admissions scandal. So walk us through the three classes and where they are today. Because for all of us, the college admission process back in the day was about being 16 or 17 years old, thinking about what the world meant to you,
right,
where there was fire in your belly, and where you might want to live for the next 4 years. Things are a little different now.
Yeah, that's right. And let me be clear first, just to say that the people involved in this case clearly crossed a line, and they crossed several lines. But still, we have to ask why this happened. This is fraud and criminality.
But if you take that aside, there's some real problems.
Yeah, that's right. So at the root of the problem is rising inequality. And usually when we talk about that, we think we're talking about the super wealthy, the people who kind of fly private jets off their private islands. But they're actually a really small number. It's a really important problem politically, but they in fact represent about 0.1% of the population. Not everybody below them lost out. Only the bottom 90% of the population lost out. And so in between, you've got this 9.9%. It's actually doing pretty well. So if you think of the economy as a kind of ladder, it's that the rungs of the ladder have been spreading apart, especially at the top. So it's just harder to make that jump from one rung to the next.
All right, so you write about families who are extremely wealthy, as you said, the 0.1% of the population. How do you solve this? Okay, let's agree this is criminality, the stuff we've seen in the last couple of days. It's fraud and criminality. But even if these colleges, and they have sent wholly inadequate letters outside, because I have two kids who got letters from the colleges saying, oh, we had no idea this was happening. Okay, maybe you had no idea that people were bribing your coaches, but you had a big idea that the rich have a better time getting into college than the poor.
Can I add one thing? Before you get to the criminality, now the admissions process is about metrics and data. And those admissions officers need to get their metrics. They need to get the most amount of applications, and they're trying to lower the amount of kids that they let in. So the whole game is different.
Right, but if you look at the numbers a little more deeply, what you can see is that the 9.9%, the wealthy elite, are actually winning. Sure, you have a small number of people from lower levels in the economy who are brought in to make it look nice, but it turns out that if you're in the child of the top 1%, you have a 77 times greater chance of being in the Ivy League.
Wait, hold on.
If you're a child of the bottom 20%.
Say that again.
If you're a child in the top 1%,
okay,
you have a 77 economically, your parents, you have a 77 times greater probability of being in the Ivy League than if your parents are in the bottom 20%.
Has that changed in the last 10 years? Has it gotten,
or 20 years, whatever?
Has it gotten worse for people who are of middle or lower income?
It's gotten worse. I mean, the trend is unmistakable. That if you look back 20 or 30 years, what you see is that, sure, the wealthy were overrepresented, but not to the extent that they are now. There was more of an opportunity for the middle class. We've created a system where you have these tiny, super prestigious universities that essentially have a small number of people that they let in to represent diversity and so on, and then a very large number of wealthy people. And the ones who are losing out are the ones in the middle, in the very big middle.
Why?
Why are they losing out? This has happened throughout history. So as the ladder of the economy, as the rungs stretch apart, it gets harder to move from one end to the other. Everyone's got a little rubber band tied to their feet, kind of representing where they start off in life. And as this expands, the people at the top especially work really hard to tighten those rubber bands because they don't want to fall down and they don't want you to come up. And so the families at the top, often without breaking the law, often with the best intentions, often trying to care for their kids, they take steps that over and over again ensure that they can be locked into place. They use their extra
that
resources
middle-class
to
people
lock themselves in.
and poor people can't take.
Steps that middle-class people and poor people can't take. I mean, how many of our listeners are going to be out there, running off to join the sailing team or the squash club or the other, the fencing team or whatever it is that's going to
or
give
the
them
SAT
kids
training
special
courses, or the really expensive college counselors, or all of these things that students in public schools without means at lower incomes can't do.
And don't forget, in all the public school funding that's been cut over the last 20 years, they cut
That's also
guidance
a
counselors.
disadvantage. Yep.
They don't even have access to guidance counselors anymore. And remember, college has gotten way more expensive.
So wealthy students have good guidance counselors, and then they have private counselors who they can use.
The one thing that we haven't noted, though, because of the internet, there's a lot more access to free information. So when you were going to college or I was going to college, you were maybe dependent on...
So Matthew, does that help? Is the internet an equalizer on that front, where people don't have college guidance, but they can learn about how you apply to these schools?
Yeah, I think it helps, and I think also the spread of information helps. I mean, people need to be aware of these problems. I think stories like this, in a way, are great because they draw attention to these issues for many people, and hopefully more kids are out there applying. But there's a lot of blame to go around,
Yes.
and let's pick on the colleges too. They have not responded to the rising inequality, I think, in a sensible way. They've decided to restrict, or rather not grow, which really is what they should have done. And so they've made themselves into little prestigious boutiques that are essentially finishing schools for investment bankers, or finishing schools for the children of investment bankers now. So they need to do a lot more. They need to expand. They should probably drop their athletic preferences, which is really just affirmative action for wealthy kids. This college counseling business needs to be cleaned up. It should be turned into a public service, perhaps. So there's a lot that can be done, and hopefully this will be an opportunity for people to think about.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there, and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.